Hi, I'm Jill Galloway. I'm an artist educator at the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery. In today's Drawn to Figures, we're talking about how artists use the five senses in portraiture. There are some artworks that you can just fall into, especially if the artist does a really good job tapping into your senses. Now remember, when we talk about your senses, we're talking about seeing, tasting, listening, smelling, and touch. This is in some ways a way to read portraiture by thinking about how the artist is tapping into your senses. Let me show you what I mean. This is a painting of Auguste Belmont and Isabelle Perry. Belmont, a part of New York's high society, was an avid sportsman. The famed Belmont Stakes is named after him. Listen to this painting. Can you hear it? Now let's take a look at this portrait of Pocahontas. This is a painting based on this engraving. Notice how in the painting, in her clothing, there's a ton of textures. Let's talk about touch here. If you were to feel this clothing, that velvet would feel one way, the feathers a whole nother way. Notice those gold buttons and that stiff lace collar. This is a painting you can almost feel. Now try to imagine describing this color to someone who can't see. What if we said gray smells like pavement after a fresh rain? Now check out this suit worn by Ben Franklin. While Ben Franklin's accomplishments were much celebrated, he preferred this very simple frontiersman style. This was a style he chose carefully. He preferred to keep his clothing plain and unadorned. It's meant to show him as unshakable and even-tempered. Now let's talk about this portrait of Katy Perry. The title of this portrait is Cupcake Katie, and it's done by artist Will Cotton. Will Cotton is known for making these elaborate confections and cakes to wrap around his models. He's been known to place icing all over his models. When asked about Katy Perry, he said she was very sugary, like saccharin. You can taste the sweetness of this painting, which is exactly what the artist is going for. And finally, seeing. When we first look at this portrait of Henrietta Lacks, we see a woman standing in a red dress in front of decorative wallpaper. But when we look more closely, we see that the wallpaper features the flower of life symbol, and the pattern on her dress resembles a cellular structure. And how about this? Notice there's a button missing. The button represents the missing cancer cells that were taken from her body without permission. Those cells were unique and were used to make over 10,000 medical patents for things including AIDS, Parkinson's, and polio. This portrait is the perfect example of looking versus seeing. We look and we see one thing, a person standing in a portrait with a red dress, and then we look again and we see a story that's untold. Thanks so much for joining me for today's Drawn to Figures lesson. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something. If you can figure out ways to pull your senses into your portraiture work, that would be fantastic. It's just one more way for you to talk to your viewer and express what you're trying to say. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.